Reviewing is often considered to be a thankless job. It may seem simple, you just watch something like a movie and then say your opinion about it, but it's after you post it online when the crap hits the fan. Yeah, you get some that like to chip in their thoughts, but often you just end up getting trolls that get triggered over an opinion outside of theirs, or hungry fans who only ask for more, completely disregarding the review itself and only ask, "Can you review this?" or "Can you talk about that?" There are some days when you can't help but wonder if it's even worth it when the rewards are so little. Hello?
Hey, you the Muppet guy?
Muppet guy? What are you talking about?
Weren't you the guy that did those Muppet vlogs years ago? I got something for you to talk about.
He was right. I did a whole series where I talked about all those Muppet Show episodes a while back, but not sure about that something he's offering. When it comes to reviewing, if you don't talk about your niche genre, some of your audience will end up freaking out. In my case, some people have a mental breakdown whenever I review something that's not a cartoon. Sorry, pal, not interested.
I didn't tell you what it is
Listen, I'm an animation guy, and I am not in the mood to experiment right now, so if you excuse me, I gotta—
It's the Happytime murderers.
What did you say?
You know, that 2018 adult Muppet movie?
No, I know what it is, but you're asking me to review it? Why me? I mean, there's already so many reviews out there, why do you need a review from me?
Because there are very few critics who are openly a Muppet fan as much as you. And I think you can do some great justice to this film, because what happened to it was, well, let's say there was a murder, alright? If you want, I can send you the movie and the script.
Okay, I'll do it.
Perfect. Good luck, kid.
I don't normally do this, but I knew I had to take on the Happytime murders. It was a concept that was very promising, with some great names attached, yet it ended up becoming a one-of-a-kind disaster. For about a whole decade since they first announced it, the Jim Henson Company tried so hard to create an R-rated movie that wanted to push the envelope and make their puppets do some shockingly raunchy things to break the stereotype of how puppets are usually viewed as kid stuff. Imagine Sausage Party, but replace the animation with the Muppets. Technically, Meet the Feebles already did the job back in 1989, but this one would have the official Henson touch. By the time it made its big screen debut back in the summer of 2018, it basically delivered what it promised. A bunch of celebrities with raunchy puppets making a bunch of drugs and sex jokes. There were some rewrites across its 10-year journey, but the film only managed to cook up a typical crime story with a series of murders where some dame hires a second-rate detective to find the murder, who she double-crosses and tries to end up scot-free. But that obviously was not enough for either audiences or critics. Generally, reviews slammed the movie hard and even called it one of the biggest disappointments of the year. It got even worse at the box office when it could only gather $27.5 million on a $40 million budget, making it one of the worst moments of any Jim Henson creation since the Muppets during the 2000 decade. I knew I had to take on this case one day. As someone who loves the works of Jim Henson as much as I do for Walt Disney, I need to give this film justice. There was obviously a murder that happened to this film, and I'm gonna find out who killed the Happytime murders. As I first inspect the cover of the DVD, I notice my first suspect standing front and center, one who is often deemed responsible for making her own films as bad as they are, Melissa McCarthy. The best way to describe McCarthy is that she's a gender-bent Adam Sandler. As an actress on her own, she's actually quite talented. Give her the right script and she'll be able to deliver a believable and impressive performance. In fact, she's even good enough to get a few Oscar nominations under her belt. But just like Sandler, while strongly capable of acting, their claim to fame comes from their set of cringy comedies. Nothing but a never-ending collection of the same dumb jokes happening where she's always yelling and tumbling everywhere for the sake of a laugh. From seeing her involvements in the film, of course she wouldn't settle with just being the star, since she was also credited as a producer with her husband Ben Falcone, and even helped out with some of the writing. On top of receiving the award for Worst Actress at the Golden Raspberries, it leads me to believe that she was the poison that doomed the film's fate. So I finally put on the film and see if my deductions were correct. An hour and a half has passed. The film finally rolled its credits, and I stared dazed and confused about my discovery.
Wow. She's actually really good.
As strange as it sounds, I'd actually say that McCarthy is one of the better things about the film. She doesn't go for the usual shtick she regularly does in her comedies, but rather plays more as the stern cop surrounded by goofy puppets that has to reunite with her ex-partner after many years ago. In a way, she does play the cliched buddy that's bitter with the main character at first, but then gradually grows a friendship with him. Yeah, it's one of those buddy movies. But to her credit, she did make the most with what she was given.
Oh, for 50 cents, I'll suck your dick.
Well, it's a great price. Makes me wish I had a dick for you to suck.
Yeah, I'm gonna, take that as a yes!
God damn it!
Call me crazy, but after going through Cameron Diaz, Katherine Heigl, and even Jamie Foxx, I think the film made the right decision to settle with Melissa. Come to think of it, even the other human actors did decently with their material, delivering their own unique style of performance to have their respective funny moments, or at least as funny as they could try to be. I wouldn't say there were any Oscar-worthy performances, but I do appreciate the effort they try to put in. So if the humans were not a problem, then could it be the puppets? Is it possible that they would be the weak link of the picture? As a Muppet fan, the thought gave me a scare, fearing that the movie's downfall was because of the Jim Henson Company failing at their own craft. I double-checked several of the puppetry moments, and in my relief, I find that I had no trouble with them at all. In fact, the puppetry is often regarded as the best element of the movie by critics, successfully creating this world where puppets and people coexist together in the same way as people in cartoons do in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. This is mainly thanks to director Brian Henson, who perfectly has his dad's sense of vision of bringing the medium to life in a believable way. And he is well experienced in doing stuff like this too, since he already directed several Muppet projects, including one of the most beloved Muppet movies, The Muppet Christmas Carol. Not to mention the amount of work done in the visual effects to make it seem like all the puppets are moving on their own with literally no strings attached. As for the puppets themselves, while their designs are not as detailed or imaginative as something like The Dark Crystal, they do stick to the cute and simple charming look that is a staple for works like Sesame Street and The Muppets, almost in a satirical way to make fun of their kiddie-like nature. But it's really the performances that make them great and feel like actual characters no different than their human counterparts. In fact, if I would pick who would be the best actor here, it would undeniably be Bill Baretta as the lead detective, Phil Phillips, who was the first puppet cop, but one screw-up ended up corrupting his life to the point of being disgraced by the force and would always rather go solo. What else do you expect from a movie detective? A happy-go-lucky chap with his life in order?
What are you harassing me for this time, Edwards?
I just happen to like the milkshakes here.
Oh, yeah? How many a day you up to now? Or, you just hitting the syrup, too?
You're gonna stop moving through the world like the laws don't apply to you.
Excuse me.
So at that point, the cast and the puppetry were no longer suspects in my case, making this a lot harder than I thought to figure out what killed this raunchy comedy.
Raunchy comedy? Maybe that's the problem.
What many don't seem to know is that making a raunchy comedy is a lot harder to get it right than they think. You can't just throw a bunch of gross-out humor and sex jokes and expect them to stick. You still gotta have the proper filmmaking, storytelling, and comedic techniques in order to have the audience be engaged with what they're seeing before they can start laughing at whatever gags you bring to the table. It can happen when the jokes can go too extreme to the point that people will feel more disgusted than find it hilarious, thus ruining the whole feature and making it seem like it cares more about pushing the envelope so far more than actually telling a good story. I ponder about those jokes in the Happytime murders, since it was heavily marketed as the nastiest movie in recent years. But it didn't take me too long to think, because the issue is not that the film takes them too far. It's actually the opposite. Believe it or not, all of the raunchiest moments in the film, like Phil's wild sex scene and McCarthy doing puppet drugs, were all shown in the film's Red Band trailer. So technically, even if you haven't seen the film itself, you have seen how the movie is at its dirtiest. The most they do outside of that to make it worth an R rating is just swearing. No gory violence, no one gets naked, just a bunch of puppets throwing F-bombs.
Well, if the shoe fits.
F you.
Yeah, you too.
F you more.
Well, f me.
Maybe.
You one crazy fuck bitch.
Now off. You're back for business.
Yeah, but go yourself.
You.
You too.
While it is a little bit of a letdown that it wasn't written as nasty as it promised, heck, I'd even say the Muppets have pushed the envelope further a few times than this, but then again, I wouldn't necessarily say that's what killed this movie. It's a flaw, yes, but certainly not enough to make the whole picture a disaster. I spent hours trying to find the movie's killer, rewatching the movie, analyzing several clips in detail, even reading through the whole script, but still nothing. How can a film be this bad with a good cast, a good director, great puppetry, and its biggest crime so far is underwhelming jokes? I was completely at a loss.
Damn it!
Just like writers, critics can also have a mental block and don't know what else to say, even when they know they're not done. At this point, there was only one thing to do. I had to take a break. I didn't care about anything else other than to get rid of my stress, so I decided to put up my favorite Garfield cartoon, Babes and Bullets. Guess you could say that I was in the mood.
So how old was your husband, Mrs. O'Tabby?
23.
Of course. It all makes sense now. Her husband was obviously a ladies' man. Tanya finds out he's unfaithful and has him snuffed. She hires a second-rate detective to find the killer, who she double-crosses and ends up scot-free. It's one of the oldest shams in the book.
Oh, that is so true. That never not gets old. Wait a minute!
She hires a second-rate detective to find the killer, who she double-crosses and ends up scot-free. It's one of the oldest shams in the book. It's one of the oldest shams in the book. It's one of the oldest shams in the book.
There were some rewrites across his 10-year journey, but the film only managed to cook up a typical crime story. She does play the cliched buddy that's bitter with the main character at first, but then gradually grows a friendship with him. Yeah, it's one of those buddy movies. What else do you expect from a movie detective? A happy-go-lucky chap with his life in order? While it is a little bit of a letdown that it wasn't written as nasty as it promised, but the film only managed to cook up a typical crime story with a series of murders where some dame hires a second-rate detective to find the murderer, who she double-crosses and tries to end up scot-free. And just like that, without even knowing, I had the killer in my hands this whole time.
Yeah?
Did you know that you sent me the murderer this whole time?
What?
When you asked me to review the Happytime murders, did you know that you also sent me the murderer of the film?
What are you talking about? I only sent you the movie itself and the script.
Exactly!
I'm not seeing your angle, Dick.
The script, man! The script killed the movie!
Every issue that this film has all lead to the script being the biggest problem. As it is a detective movie, the most important job it has to do is solve the mystery. But this movie has possibly the blandest detective story you could ever find. Sure, some could say that there's a racial allegory with the puppets, but even that felt like something was ripped off from Roger Rabbit. That, and all mixed with the most cookie-cutter buddy cop plot with a collection of overused tropes as its characters, results in the film to commit the biggest crime to a detective-style mystery: becoming predictable. And when the viewer already solved the mystery long before the film is finished and correctly predicts some of the events that would happen next, then it no longer becomes engaging. It no longer becomes fun or interesting to watch, and ultimately, it makes the movie boring.
So you're saying that because it has a bad script with a predictable story, that's what killed this movie?
Absolutely.
But you said it yourself. There's a lot of good things about this film, so it can't be as bad as critics say.
I did say that, but you underestimate the importance of the script.
Yes, there's a lot of great acting, great directing, and great puppetry, but in filmmaking, they can only be as good as their screenplay. Throughout the years of rewriting it went through, it ended up with possibly the most hopeless script ever written for a mystery, with a predictable plot, uninterestingly cliched characters, and jokes that are stale and not even as edgy as promised. And as a result, they give the cast and crew little to nothing to work with, even when they're trying their best. The film does contain some positives, but the biggest issue is so bad that it even hinders on their execution. And if I would give this a rating, I'd just go, at best, a 4 out of 10 and give it my animated seal of garbage.
But I wouldn't say that this film is entirely useless, though. It did teach us a very important lesson about filmmaking.
Which is?
The power of the script.
Every element in filmmaking plays a significant role, but the script and the writing behind it is the heart and soul of the picture. It's what tells us its story, it's what introduces us to its characters, and it's what presents what happens across its journey. The script sets the foundation of the project, and if that falls, then everything else goes down with it. There are movies with a star-studded award-winning cast, and they suck. There are movies with some of the most revolutionary animation and visual effects, and they suck. There are movies with some of the most inspiring music and the score, and they suck. There are even movies that are greatly directed with beautiful cinematography and genius editing, and they suck. Why? Because they don't have a good script, and when the script has no hope to begin with, then all effort put onto everything else is worthless.
So I hope that solves the case for you.
Wow. I never really thought of it that way. By the way, can I ask you one more thing?
Sure, what is it?
Now, gentlemen with the Happytime Murderers, could you review, Meet the Feebles? No. How about another Jim Henson flick like, Follow That Bird or Labyrinth? Or, hey, how about follow it up with, say, one of the lesser TV productions? Hello? Hello? Are you there? Hello?
Just like I said, reviewing can be a thankless job.
Perhaps I should have had him review The Dark Crystal instead.